I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 15. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Well, hello, friends. Welcome to episode 15. I can't believe we're on episode 15 already. I hope you enjoyed the last couple of episodes that have some free downloads that go with them that are meant to be very helpful with you in your creating your own strategic plan. This episode, I thought I would cover, it's titled 2 Important Numbers in Strategic Planning and How to Calculate Them. If from episode 14 you did get the free download, which is the strategy prep spreadsheet, there are equations built in there with these 2 numbers already calculated. So feel free, if you have not grabbed that, go grab it so that you have it to use and you'll understand more fully what we're talking about today on this episode. And if you don't have that resource for whatever reason, you don't have it yet, this will be a great, it'll help you. It'll help you decide how you can best set yourself up for good projections with strategic planning. Okay, so the 2 numbers that are very important for strategic planning are average revenue per case and your acquisition cost per client. We are going to start with the average revenue per case conversation. If you are a contingency fee-based firm, then this is how you're going to calculate it. You need to pick a date range that you want to know your average revenue per case. Let's just say you're going to pick the last 12 months. So you're going to go back in the last 12 months and you're going to pull a report to see how much revenue has been generated in the last 12 months in your firm. Then you're going to pull a report to see how many cases have been closed and collected on in the last 12 months in your firm. Then you'll take the revenue number divided by the number of cases closed and collected on in your firm, and that is your average revenue per case. Now, if you are not a contingency fee-based firm, then you need to also, you'll still pick a date range. So let's just say you're going to go with the last 12 months. You need to figure out the number of cases closed during that date range in your firm. And then you need to figure out the total combined revenue produced by just those cases. And there should be a fairly easy way to get this information within your software. If not, that's a problem. So figure that out or start tracking it on your own in a simple spreadsheet. But this is something that you should be able to know very quickly at all times is the average revenue per case. So for non-contingency fee-based firms, so you have your date range, 12 months, you know your total combined revenue produced by the cases that have been closed within that date range. And you know the number of cases closed during that date range. So you take that total combined revenue divided by the number of cases. So that will spit out for you your average revenue per case. That is a very important number. And I'm going to give a little more context into how we use that in strategic planning sessions. But let's just now talk about acquisition cost and how to get that number. Now, before I go into this, there are people that will immediately push back on me when I'm talking about acquisition cost because they'll say, the way that you figure this out it's not the same as like my AdWords campaign has a different acquisition cost than what you're saying here. And I'm not getting granular with marketing. As a business, if you're doing any marketing, which you should be, then you are going to need to track on a very granular level what you are spending with each campaign and each effort and what you're getting out of it. So you will have sort of an ROI on each effort inside of marketing. But the number that I care about when I am thinking bigger strategic planning is, as a firm, as a business, what on average are you spending to get a new client? So now to get that more general number that is still, you do need to know on a granular level more about your marketing campaigns, but it is still something you should know because it will help indicate, it's an indicator of the health of your business. Just generally speaking, what is the acquisition cost? So you pick a date range, and let's just say we're going to use 12 months again. So in the last 12 months, you need to figure out what you've spent on marketing. You should be tracking this month over month over month anyway. So that tracker from episode 14 has all this in there. But so you want to know the total marketing spend for the business in in the last 12 months. Then you want to, in that same date range, figure out how many new hires you have had in the last 12 months. How many clients you've retained in the last 12 months. Once you know that, then you just take the total marketing spend divided by that total number of new hires. And that will give you, generally speaking, your acquisition cost inside the business. Here's the thing. I am not a marketer, but what we do discuss in strategic planning is your budget. What are you allotting for marketing? And is it feel right or not? And when you have this kind of information and you can bring this to whoever you are using as a marketing specialist, if you're using someone, this is really good information for them. If you want to tell them, hey, this is what I want my budget to get up to this year, or this is what I want my budget to stay within this year, and I just want help from you to determine how best to spend this money. That is a really good conversation to have with whoever is handling your marketing. And so in the strategic planning session, we look at the marketing spend. We divide it by the number of new clients that have been retained, and we get a number. So let's just say that when you did the calculation, your acquisition cost was $600 per new client, per new hire. And let's just say that when you did your average revenue per case calculation, it was $10,000. So that means on average, you're spending $600 to get $10,000. Now, once you do this calculation and you get your acquisition cost, I'm not saying that whatever number you land on there with your calculation, I'm not saying that that is the end all be all, but it is helpful to know that that's the current reality inside the business. And so if we didn't change a thing, this is what we would have to do if we wanted to hit our goals moving forward with that same ratio, that same 5 to 6% marketing spend. So now feels like a really good time to tell you how we use these when we think forward. With the average revenue per case, usually clients have a revenue goal for, the next 1 to 3 years. And so we work backwards to figure out, okay, well, if this is your 3-year goal, then what's your 1-year goal so that you're on track for your 3-year goal, for example. And once we figure out the revenue goal, then we determine, okay, if we divide that revenue goal by the average revenue per new case or average revenue per case, then we know how many cases we need, how many new clients we need to come through the door in order to be on track for the revenue goal. And that's assuming, and this is a big assumption, but it's assuming that our average revenue per case stays exactly the same. Now, we do set goals with teams around bumping up the average revenue per case. So that is a part of the strategy as well. But I'm just trying to keep it simple for the sake of this podcast and help you learn how you can use these to project future goals. So, okay, you got a revenue goal, you divide that by your average revenue per case, and that tells you how many cases you need in order to hit your revenue goal if nothing changed with the average revenue. So then let's just say, I have a calculator in front of me. So let's say your revenue goal is $1 million and your average revenue per case is 10,000. So if you divide those two numbers, then that means you need to close about 100 cases. So that's really good to know, right? Like that gives you something very tangible you can think about. You can divide that by 12, and that means you need, a little over 8 cases to be closed every month, 8.3. So really 9. You need 9 cases to be closed every month. This is good information to know because it means that you understand the volume that you're going to have to handle. And understanding the volume that you're going to have to handle, that opens up a whole new awareness around other things. Do I have how many team members am I going to need to support that? What new team members am I going to need to bring on to support that caseload? Also, if I know I need to work through 100 cases, what's my conversion rate? What of the consults that I have, what's my conversion rate on people who actually hire us? Because that's going to need to be factored in, because it doesn't mean you just get 100 new people through the door for a consult. If you're running at a 70% conversion rate from all the consults that you have, then that means you're actually going to need 130 consults in order to get your 100 hires. So it's a super valuable number to know. Once you know your average revenue per case and you know the revenue number you want to hit, you can use your average revenue per case number to help you figure out this is how many cases that we need. And then if that's how many cases that we need, then there's a whole bunch of other things that have to line up to be able to handle those cases or make sure that we get those cases. So it's a really helpful number with projections and planning. The other thing, so with acquisition cost, how we use this. Essentially, once you know the number of cases that you need in the year, so let's just say it's you need 100 new cases. You need to work through 100 new cases. Then you have to figure out your acquisition cost is $600 if we're using the example we did earlier. So then you would take your 600 times 100, that's 60 grand is what you need to spend in marketing in order to be on track for your goals. So this is really helpful information to give you a read on what needs to happen inside the firm to be on track for the goals. So these two numbers, the average revenue per case and the acquisition cost, are numbers that are required to be able to project in a helpful way. Now, remember, I'm saying this, and I know that there's some of you out there listening. They're like, well, that's not a perfect science. Yeah, but it's as close as you can get when you're coming to projections. It is the most helpful that to numbers in order to help us determine roughly what needs to happen, right? And actually create a plan that you can start to execute. And here's the thing about a plan. You begin your plan, you're executing, you're implementing, and then something's got to change. So it's almost like, you plan your work and you work your plan, but you should never expect the plan to go perfectly. Like that's just not how it works. I have never worked with a team. I think I can honestly say this. I've never worked with a team who is whether they are like uber successful and beating their goals for that like they are just knocking it out of the park, or they're falling short of their goals. There's no one that's ever like hit the goals perfectly. Like that doesn't happen, right? But you do project in a way where you set smart goals. You set things that are gonna stretch you. And then if for some reason you're able to get there really easily, you adjust again, like you reevaluate again and take a look at what's changed and all of that. And then same thing, if you aren't even anywhere close, then what you have to realize is it's not the math's fault. It's never the math. And so the math is really important to get a solid plan. And then as you move forward, there are other things that happen that affect the reality that affect the outcome for the better or for worse. And when that happens, you got to stop. You have to reevaluate and reset, like use the new math and reset again. Right. So it's a great way to get a read for projections. Yes, to know your current reality, like what is my average revenue per case? What is my acquisition cost? You should know those two numbers as a business owner, but then you can also use those to get as close as possible to some goals that are really smart and calculated, not just feelings being thrown around. So I hope this is helpful, and I'm happy to answer questions more about this. We could go so deep on rabbit holes here. So if you do have any follow-up questions, go to speakpipe.com/velocitywork. You can leave a voice message there, either anonymously or not. But if you ask your questions there, then I can address follow-up questions in a future episode. I hope this was helpful. I hope you use it. Again, episode 14 has the strategy prep spreadsheet, and where you enter in a bunch of data so you get a sense for your historical and your current reality, and your historical data and your current reality. And then it allows you to be able to set goals really well moving forward. I'm telling you, if I was working with a strategic plan, this would be an element of our consideration when we are looking towards the future is, okay, this is your average revenue per case. This is your acquisition cost. We know your goals, so let's do some math to figure out how this is actually going to work out and how this is going to line up to the best of our ability. That is what I have for you this week, my friends. By the way, come hang with us on Instagram. We are there a lot. Facebook, we're there a fair amount. Our Instagram handle or username is velocity.work. And on Facebook, we're facebook.com/meetvelocitywork. So you could check us out there because, you live busy lives. And if you want to stay up to date on the resources that we are providing, then that's the place to do it, because we will post those there so that you have access and you don't miss anything. Until next week, my friends, talk to you soon. Thanks so much for listening to the Velocity Work Podcast. If you've enjoyed this podcast and you run your own law firm, you have to come see if the Velocity Work client experience is for you. Head over to hello.velocitywork.com to set up a free call. We can learn more about one another, answer any questions we may have for one another, and determine if the Velocity Work client experience is a right fit. I hope to connect with you soon. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.